Ever since the creation of the standardized hockey jersey, typography and hockey have been intertwined through the numbers that players wore on their backs. And fronts if you're Boston for some reason in the 30s. Besides the occasional stroke or drop shadow, the typography used for the numbers rarely varied from its blocky slab serif style. Boy, it sure is cold in there. Hi, I'm Informer Evan, here to inform you about stuff. According to fonts.com, there's their logo. A serif-style typeface is characterized by its geometric, block-like serifs. Alright, I'm gonna go back in the freezer. That was weird. Anyway, the world of type on hockey jerseys was smooth sailing, all until the 90s. All of a sudden, Paul Kariya's number 9 went from looking like it belonged at a stable, high-income professional job to an angsty teenage rock festival. Someone had chucked Brett Hull's number 16 down a hill, and the Islanders' numbers looked like they had a pretty good night out yesterday. The typography of the NHL had gotten into personality. I mean, you can't be called the Lightning and that be your font. There, that's much better. But the question to be asked is, why now? Yeah, these design choices directly reflected the typographic trends of the 90s, such as playful lettering and handwritten natural style, but why didn't the wavy groove of the 70s or the Art Deco of the 20s and 30s make it onto the backs of NHL stars? One word: sublimation. Sublimation is a print process that involves printing of an image onto fabric with ink and heat. It was first discovered in 1957 by French textile worker Noël Duplass, but it wasn't until the late 60s when the invention started to take off. Sublimation then made its way to professional sports in the 90s, where its application and use exploded with a number of wacky and mold-shattering designs. That one's pretty sick. Up until this point, thick, blocky, slab serif fonts had been used not only to increase visibility on the ice, but to simplify the number sewing process. Each individual character on the back of a sweater had to be individually sewn onto the fabric, and the blockiness of the serifs made this process much simpler for the jersey manufacturers. However, with sublimation, numbers no longer had to be sewn onto the jerseys. They could simply be printed directly onto the fabric, no needles needed. While game-worn jerseys still had sew-on numbers, the commercially sold retail jerseys could rely on sublimation while still in mass production. This opened up a multitude of design possibilities, with 5 new teams being added at the start of the decade and the introduction of the third jersey program in 1996. There are a lot of new designs that to be made, and sublimation allowed the designers to get creative. Gone were the days of the traditional varsity-style font, and in were the new typographic styles. Now, these styles focus mainly on a few main design trends of the era, such as handwritten, italics, asymmetrical geometry, and a mixture of rounded and squared elements. For example, let's take the Buffalo Sabres typeface used from 1996 to 2006. It is a prime example of many of these typographic trends, with its italicized style, its use of both rounded and sharp lines, and the asymmetrical stroke width between the left and right sides of the 8. But just as quickly as they appeared, the crazy styles of the 90s vanished. How come? Outside of the fact that these styles were far from timeless and quickly went out of style, let's be honest, does this look like something that you could see for over 40 years at a time? They were also very impractical. Take the infamous New York Islanders fist strip jerseys. While the numbers were very artistic and kinda cool at a standstill, their abstract flowing style was completely illegible at game speed. This made it much harder for broadcasters and fans alike to even make out who had the puck or who scored. On top of that, as the decade went along, these extreme styles started to feel forced, and partially because they were. During the introduction of the third jersey program in 1996, jersey designers were being told by the NHL to use sublimation in every new design.
And I did not like that. And what I said is, just because we have the technology to do something doesn't mean we should use it. So that was done with me basically turning a blind eye to it.
Now, this obviously led to fan fatigue, and soon enough, these radical new styles were shelved. While the artistic typographic styles of the 90s may have taken a backseat, they didn't die. As of late, jerseys are starting to see a resurgence in these types of styles, aided by the introduction of the reverse retro program in 2020. Old, once laughed at fonts, like the one on the Anaheim Ducks Mighty Ducks jersey, are being brought back with fan support, and new stylistic fonts are being introduced, like the one on this new Vegas look. Pretty clean. These trends never left us. They were always there in the back of our minds. To most, the radical type trends of the 90s are like high school. Cringeworthy and tacky at the time, but seen as nostalgic in hindsight. They were never meant to stay, and they didn't. But the lasting impression and the memories that they brought us are things that will never be forgotten. Who am I kidding? I'm born in '04.